I want you to picture this. A garden filled with white chairs, rose petals scattered along the aisle, and a string quartet playing soft notes that should have felt like the soundtrack to the happiest day of my life. But when the music swelled and the guests rose to their feet, every single chair on the left side of the aisle, the side reserved for the bride's family, remained completely, painfully empty. Not a single familiar face. Not a single parent, sibling, or cousin to watch me walk toward the altar. And most of all, not my father, who had promised with shining eyes that he would walk me down that aisle. Instead, he was across town at my sister's baby shower, raising a champagne glass while I forced my trembling legs to carry me alone, my veil brushing against the roses as though trying to comfort me. That's the image that went viral the next day when I posted a single photo on Instagram. That's the moment my entire world shifted. But before I take you into that nightmare, let me rewind. Because to understand how my wedding day turned into a public betrayal, you have to see the cracks in my so-called perfect family long before the aisle stretched out in front of me. Growing up in Boston, people used to call us the picture-perfect Morgan family. My parents, Alan and Diane, loved to host barbecues where neighbors would gush over my dad's grilled salmon and my mom's Pinterest-worthy desserts. My little sister Natalie would be running around the backyard with her curls bouncing, a gaggle of friends always orbiting her like she was the sun. And me, Chandra, 4 years older, was the one setting the table, making sure everyone had enough lemonade, making sure things looked perfect. From the outside, it looked like balance. From the inside, it always felt like imbalance, me in the background, Natalie at center stage. I'll never forget being 8 years old, clutching a spelling bee trophy so shiny I could see my reflection in it. I ran into the kitchen where my mom was chopping carrots, practically bursting. "Mom, I won first place." She smiled absently, wiped her hands on a towel and said, "That's nice, honey." 10 minutes later, Natalie toddled in, showing off a crude drawing of a house with lopsided windows. My mother gasped like it was Picasso himself reborn, slapped it on the fridge, and announced to my father, "Look at our little artist." My spelling bee trophy never even made it to a shelf. You see the pattern, right? When I brought home straight A's, the response was a nod. When Natalie brought home a B+, it was ice cream sundaes and photos for the scrapbook. My debate team wins were barely acknowledged, but my mom showed up to every soccer game Natalie sat on the bench for. "It's not favoritism," my mom would insist when I dared to ask. "Natalie just needs more encouragement. You're naturally gifted, Chandra, you don't need as much support." But here's the truth, everyone needs support, even the strong ones, especially the strong ones. By the time I graduated high school top of my class, my parents were at Natalie's prom photo shoot. They barely made it to my college graduation, slipping in after the ceremony ended, still beaming from Natalie's big night. I swallowed the sting and told myself to toughen up. That's what I did, toughen up, build walls, excel anyway. I earned a scholarship to a top architecture school, became one of the youngest project leads at my firm, and carved out a life in Boston that was mine. And yet every success was treated like background noise compared to my sister's next whim. Her new major, her latest breakup, her random new hobby. Still, I told myself it would be different when I got married. Surely my wedding, the one day everyone is supposed to rally around you, would finally be my moment. And in a way, it seemed like it might, because then came Jackson. We met during a thunderstorm in the most unromantic way possible. I was drenched, cursing myself for forgetting my umbrella when I ducked into a coffee shop. Jackson, a pediatric physical therapist, was sitting by the window with his laptop. Without hesitation, he slid me napkins and his untouched hot chocolate, grinning like I wasn't a soggy mess. That's how it began, small kindnesses that turned into long conversations, late-night walks, and a love so steady it scared me at first. Jackson didn't just listen, he remembered. He didn't just show up, he stayed. And his family, they welcomed me with open arms in a way mine never had. His mom, Martha, called me sweetheart the first time we met. His dad, Thomas, cracked embarrassing stories about Jackson's childhood, pride in every word. I used to sit in their kitchen drinking tea and wonder, is this what family is supposed to feel like? 3 years later, Jackson proposed at the same coffee shop, at the same table by the window, with the rain pouring outside like a perfect echo of our first meeting. Some people see rain as gloomy, he whispered, kneeling with a ring that sparkled brighter than the storm. But I'll always see it as the weather that brought me to you. I cried, I said yes, the whole shop clapped. And for a brief moment, I believed maybe my parents would finally step up. When I called them, my dad even said the words I'd been aching to hear my entire life. I can't wait to walk my little girl down the aisle. Little girl, he had never called me that before. I held onto those words like a lifeline. But if life has taught me anything, it's that hope can be cruel. The engagement dinner was supposed to be the night both families toasted to our future. Jackson's parents showed up early, gifts in hand, brimming with excitement. My parents arrived late, with Natalie in tow, though she hadn't even been invited. Just as dessert was about to be ordered, Natalie cleared her throat and rested her hand on her still flat stomach. Since everyone important to me is here, I have some news. She announced her pregnancy. The room shifted instantly. My mother shrieked with joy. My father's face lit up in a way it never had for me. Toasts were made, champagne was ordered, questions flew about due dates and baby names. My engagement dinner became a baby shower prelude in the span of 5 minutes. Jackson squeezed my hand under the table as I forced a smile, the taste of betrayal mixing with creme brulee. That was the first sign, my wedding would not be my day after all. From there, the pattern was impossible to ignore. My mom canceled dress shopping because Natalie had morning sickness. She missed invitation planning because Natalie needed company at her ultrasound. My father's promised check for the venue never arrived, but Jackson's parents quietly covered the deposit. Each time I told myself they'll show up for the big day, Dad promised. But then came the phone call. 3 months before the wedding, Natalie called me herself. I wanted to let you know before Mom tells you, she said breezily. I've scheduled my baby shower for June 15th. My heart plummeted. Natalie, that's my wedding day, you RSVP'd, yes, you knew that. She gave a little laugh. Oops, must be pregnancy brain. But unfortunately, the venue I wanted only had that date available, and I already paid the deposit. I begged her to reschedule, offered to pay her deposit myself. But she snapped back, you're being selfish. This is your niece or nephew we're talking about. A new life, more important than a party. When I called my parents, certain they'd back me, my mother said softly, honey, you know Natalie's in a delicate state. The doctor says no stress. You're stronger than she is, you'll understand. And my father, the same man who had promised to walk me down the aisle, he said, a baby shower is once in a lifetime for our first grandchild. Your wedding is important too, but not as important as Natalie. That was the moment something inside me cracked. The morning of my wedding dawned clear and bright, the sky cruelly perfect. My best friend Taylor, my maid of honor, handed me coffee and asked quietly, any word from them? I shook my head, my phone was silent, my father wasn't coming, my mother wasn't coming, not a single cousin or aunt or uncle. They were all across town at Natalie's shower. When the coordinator asked, who's walking you down the aisle? I lifted my chin and said, I'll walk myself, I've been doing it all my life. And as I stepped into that aisle, my heels clicking against stone, every empty chair screamed louder than the music. Every glance from Jackson's family burned pity into my skin. My vision blurred with tears, and halfway down I faltered, until Jackson's father Thomas stood up. He didn't come to take my arm. He just pressed his hand over his heart and nodded at me, silently saying, we see you, we're here. That nod gave me the strength to take the final steps. But in that moment, something inside me hardened forever. If you've ever wondered how a family gets to the point of leaving their daughter alone on her wedding day, let me take you back. Because the truth is, it didn't happen overnight. The betrayal on my wedding day was the climax of a story that had been building since the moment my sister Natalie was born. I was 4 years old when she arrived, and I can still remember the smell of antiseptic in the hospital room, the squeak of my sneakers on the polished floor as my grandparents led me in. My mother's face glowed as she held Natalie, cradling her like something fragile and divine. Come meet your sister, Chandra, she whispered. My father bent down to whisper in my ear, she's going to need you, okay? You're the big sister now. At the time, I thought it was a badge of honor. But looking back, it was the first brick in a wall that would always leave me on the outside. Natalie was different from me in every way. I was the bookworm, quiet, serious, methodical. She was chaos in curls, loud, dramatic, needy. When she cried, the whole house shifted to soothe her. When she laughed, my parents dropped everything to join in. And when I tried to tell them I was scared of the dark or that kids at school were teasing me, I got the same line every time. Be strong for Natalie. She looks up to you. That phrase became my prison. Be strong. Don't cry, don't need. By the time I was 10, I knew how the script went. If Natalie forgot her homework, I gave her mine. If she wanted the last cookie, I handed it over. If she had a tantrum, my parents looked at me and said, "Just let her win this one, Chandra. You're the older sister." And here's the part that stung the most. The world applauded them for it. Teachers, neighbors, family friends, everyone thought we were such a loving family. They saw the holiday cards with matching outfits, the carefully staged smiles. No one saw the quiet moments when I sat in my room, clutching an award certificate no one bothered to hang on the wall, listening to my parents downstairs gushing over Natalie's latest art project. One memory still burns in my chest, like it happened yesterday. I was 15, a finalist in the state debate championships. I'd practiced for weeks, memorized statistics, rehearsed in front of the mirror until my throat was raw. My parents promised they'd be there. They even said they'd bring Natalie so she could see what excellence looks like. When I stepped onto the stage, my eyes searched the audience. Empty seats. I gave the speech anyway, fire in my voice, and I won. First place. When I called my mom afterward, buzzing with pride, she said, "Oh honey, Natalie had a soccer game and she was nervous, so we didn't want her to feel alone. You understand, right? We'll celebrate later." I never told her that Natalie's team lost 7-0, and she barely played 5 minutes. But that night, I sat on my bed staring at my shiny medal, wondering why my achievements never seemed worth showing up for. Fast forward to college. The favoritism didn't fade, it evolved. When I graduated, my parents were late because Natalie's prom photos took longer than expected. When I landed my first job at a respected architecture firm, they said, "That's nice," and immediately pivoted to talk about Natalie changing her major again. But I kept hoping foolishly that one day they'd see me. That's the hook they had in me, the endless craving for their approval, the idea that if I worked harder, achieved more, maybe, just maybe, they'd look at me the way they looked at her. Then came the engagement dinner. I told you how Natalie hijacked it with her pregnancy announcement. What I didn't tell you is what happened afterward. Jackson's mom, Martha, pulled me aside in the ladies' room while I was blotting my eyes with a paper towel. She smelled faintly of lavender and hand lotion, a comforting contrast to the sharp scent of disinfectant soap in the air. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "I know that hurt. You don't have to pretend it didn't." I wanted to collapse into her arms and sob, but instead I forced a smile. "I'm used to it." Her eyes filled with sadness. "Don't ever get used to being treated like you're second best. You deserve to be celebrated." Her words hit me like a truth I'd been avoiding. But even then, even with Jackson's family showing me what real support looked like, I clung to the hope that my parents would come through in the end. But the cracks only widened. When I went wedding dress shopping, my mom canceled at the last minute because Natalie needed someone to drive her to a doctor's appointment. I ended up going with Taylor, my best friend, who clapped and cried in the dressing room while I stared at myself in the mirror, wishing my mother could see me. When we had the menu tasting, my parents skipped it because Natalie wasn't feeling well. I sat at the table with Jackson, sampling entrees, my chest tight as I imagined my family laughing over soup with her instead. Taylor saw it all, she wasn't afraid to call it out. "Chan," she said one night when we were addressing invitations, "this isn't normal. They're treating your wedding like an afterthought." "They'll come through," I insisted, sealing an envelope with shaking hands. "My dad promised he'd walk me down the aisle, that's what matters." But I didn't fully believe it. Then came the baby shower conflict, the final straw. When Natalie insisted her shower had to be on the same day as my wedding, I thought it was a cruel joke. When she accused me of being selfish for asking her to reschedule, I felt like I was losing my mind. And when my parents took her side, soothing me with words like "you're strong and you'll understand," something inside me finally snapped. Do you know what it feels like to realize your parents will never choose you? Not once. not even on the most important day of your life. It's a kind of grief that doesn't get funerals or sympathy cards. It's invisible, but it's crushing. The week before my wedding, I made one last desperate call to my dad. I can still hear the static crackle of the phone line, the way my voice trembled as I said, "Dad, please, just you. Walk me down the aisle like you promised. You can go to the baby shower right after, please." There was a long sigh, then his voice heavy with resignation. "I'm sorry, Chandra, your mother and sister need me there. You'll be fine, you've always been independent." I hung up, my heart splintering into pieces I wasn't sure I'd ever put back together. The night before the wedding, Taylor stayed with me in the hotel suite. She tried to distract me with wine and funny stories, but every time my phone lit up, I grabbed it, hopping for a last-minute message. Nothing. When I finally crawled into bed, the city lights glowed outside the window, mocking me with their indifference. I whispered into the darkness, "What's wrong with me? Why wasn't I enough?" Taylor's voice was steady in the dark. "There's nothing wrong with you, there's everything wrong with them." I wanted to believe her, I really did. On the morning of my wedding, as the makeup artist brushed blush onto my cheeks and the photographer snapped photos of me in my gown, I kept glancing at my phone. My father's promise replayed in my head like a broken record. "I can't wait to walk my little girl down the aisle." But when the ceremony began, the left side of the garden was empty, and I realized the truth I'd been avoiding my whole life. I would always walk alone if I waited for them. So I straightened my shoulders, gripped my bouquet, and whispered to myself, "You've been doing this all along. You don't need them now." The morning after my wedding should have been filled with bliss, room service trays, tangled sheets, Jackson's arms wrapped around me while we whispered about our honeymoon in Hawaii. Instead, I woke up to silence. My phone screen glowed with nothing. No texts, no calls, no congratulations from my parents, my sister, or anyone from my side of the family. It was as if the day had never happened. Jackson stirred beside me, brushing my hair off my face. "Any word?" he asked softly. I shook my head, throat tight. "Nothing, not even a text." He kissed my forehead. "Then let's focus on us. Let's start the honeymoon early." But something inside me had shifted. For years, I had swallowed their neglect, telling myself to be strong, to be understanding. But as I scrolled through Taylor's photos from the wedding, one image made me stop cold. Me walking down the aisle alone, empty chairs glaring in the background. That photo told the whole truth without a single word. My family didn't show up. They chose my sister's baby shower instead. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to hide it. I opened Instagram, my fingers trembling. Caption: "Yesterday, I walked alone toward my future husband while every chair on my side remained empty. My entire family chose my sister's baby shower instead. Thank you to everyone who did show up. You are my true family now." I stared at the screen, heart pounding. My finger hovered over share. This wasn't about revenge. It was about telling the truth, about finally refusing to pretend. I pressed it. Then I turned off my phone. Jackson and I went down to the hotel restaurant for breakfast, the smell of bacon and fresh coffee filling the air. For one blissful hour, I pretended the world outside didn't exist. We laughed about the honeymoon itinerary, argued about whether we should try surfing, and clinked glasses of orange juice like nothing was wrong. But when I turned my phone back on, the illusion shattered. The screen lit up like a firestorm. 37 missed calls, dozens of voicemails, hundreds of Instagram notifications. My parents, my sister, aunts, uncles, even my grandmother who barely knew how to text, all had tried to reach me. The first message I opened was from my father: "Take that post down immediately. Call me now." The second from my mother: "How could you embarrass us like this? Everyone is calling. You're ruining our family's reputation." And then Natalie: "You've ruined everything. People are attacking me because of you. You're selfish." Selfish, that word again. The word they'd used to silence me my whole life. I scrolled further, stunned. Extended relatives I barely spoke to were commenting on my post with shock and outrage. Old college friends messaged me saying, "I always thought your family was so perfect." Even some of my parents' friends left comments publicly condemning them. My phone buzzed nonstop as the post spread. What had been my private pain was now spilling into the open, and people were choosing sides. Jackson took the phone gently from my hand. You don't have to read all of this right now. But I did, because for once people weren't ignoring my pain. They were seeing it. That afternoon, as Jackson packed for Hawaii, the doorbell rang. Taylor stood there, hair messy, holding takeout bags. Brought reinforcements, she said, waving cartons of Chinese food. Thought you could use a friend while the internet is melting down. We sat cross-legged on the bed, slurping lo mein straight from the cartons. It's blowing up, she said between bites. I've had 3 different people send me your post already, asking if it's true. Of course it's true, I muttered. They abandoned me. Taylor's eyes softened. And now the whole world knows. I wanted to feel triumphant, but instead I felt raw, exposed, like I'd opened a wound for everyone to gawk at. The calls didn't stop. By evening I had over 50 missed calls. One voicemail from my father stood out. Chandra, this has gone too far, you need to stop. Do you want to destroy this family? Take it down now. Destroy the family. As if my telling the truth was more destructive than their actions. I turned my phone off again. That night, Jackson booked us an earlier flight to Hawaii. We don't need to sit in the middle of this mess, he said. Let's go make our own memories. I agreed, but before we boarded, I turned my phone on one last time to check our reservations. More messages had poured in. Some were supportive, some were furious, but one stood out. It was from my Aunt Julia, my mother's sister, who had always stayed quiet at family gatherings. As Chandra's aunt, I'm heartbroken and ashamed. No baby shower is more important than your daughter's wedding. I should have spoken up years ago, I'm sorry. I stared at the message, my throat tight. For the first time, someone in my family acknowledged the truth. Hawaii was like stepping into another world. The air was thick with the scent of plumeria, the waves crashed rhythmically, and for a while I could almost forget the chaos waiting back home. Jackson and I swam in turquoise water, hiked to waterfalls, and ate pineapple so sweet it dripped down our chins. But at night, lying under the stars, I couldn't escape the thought of those empty chairs. My family's absence echoed louder than any crashing wave. On the 3rd night I told Jackson, I keep replaying it, the aisle, the emptiness. It's like proof that I never mattered. He squeezed my hand. Or it's proof that you were strong enough to walk anyway. His words sat heavy in my chest, planting a seed of strength I didn't know I had. Halfway through the honeymoon, I finally turned my phone back on. The post had gone viral, thousands of likes, hundreds of comments. Strangers shared their own stories of being abandoned, overlooked, betrayed by family. My inbox was filled with confessions. My parents missed my graduation for my brother's basketball game. My sister's baby shower overshadowed my engagement too. I thought I was the only one. I realized my story wasn't just mine. It was a mirror for others. But alongside the support came venom. Natalie had posted her own side on Facebook, painting me as dramatic, selfish, ungrateful. She's always needed the spotlight, she wrote. I didn't know she'd stoop this low to ruin my special day. My parents liked the post. That was the breaking point. Seeing my parents publicly validate her version of the story, erasing mine, felt like a knife. I called my father. He answered on the 2nd ring, his voice sharp. Chandra, finally, we need to talk about this mess you've created. Mess I created, my voice shook with fury. You left me at the altar alone. You chose a baby shower over my wedding, and now you're angry because I told the truth. He sighed heavily. You're blowing this out of proportion. Families make sacrifices. Natalie is fragile, you're strong, you'll survive. The same script, always the same. Do you even hear yourself? I whispered. Do you know how it felt to walk down that aisle alone? There was silence. Then he said, take the post down, that's what matters right now. I hung up. Later that night, Jackson found me on the balcony, tears streaking my face, the ocean wind whipping my hair. What if I really am selfish? I whispered. What if they're right? He pulled me close. Wanting your family at your wedding isn't selfish. Expecting your father to keep his promise isn't selfish. They gaslighted you your whole life into believing that, but it ends now. I buried my face in his chest, letting his steady heartbeat anchor me. For the first time, I began to believe he was right. Why is it that the people closest to us can wound us the deepest and still expect us to stay silent about it? The first thing I saw when Jackson unlocked the apartment door was the blur of flower arrangements and gift baskets piled in the entryway, congratulations cards from relatives, supportive messages from old friends, even a bouquet from my mother's book club leader. It was surreal, like strangers cared more about my wedding than my own family. But before I could even process it, Jackson froze, peering through the peephole, his jaw tightened. They're here. My stomach dropped. Who? Your parents and Natalie. Every nerve in my body went on high alert. I wasn't ready. I wasn't healed. But maybe I never would be. I took a deep breath. Let them in. They entered stiffly, like soldiers walking into enemy territory. My mother's hair was frizzed, her eyes puffy from lack of sleep. My father looked angry, jaw clenched so tight a vein throbbed in his temple. Natalie, rounder now at 5 months pregnant, looked both defiant and fragile, her hand resting protectively on her stomach. Can we sit? My mother asked, her voice shaky. Go ahead. I gestured toward the couch, but chose the armchair opposite them, the space between us wide as an ocean. My father wasted no time. This has gone far enough. You need to take that post down. People are calling us nonstop. Your mother can't even go to the grocery store without someone asking why we missed your wedding. I laughed, bitter and sharp. Maybe because you did miss my wedding. My mother flinched. Chandra, please, that photo makes us look like monsters. It doesn't make you look like anything. It shows exactly what happened. Natalie leaned forward, tears in her eyes. Do you know what people are saying to me? I'm getting hate messages. Strangers are calling me a horrible sister. This stress isn't good for the baby. Funny, I said flatly. You didn't seem worried about my stress when you scheduled your shower on my wedding day. She sniffled, her voice trembling. I didn't mean to, I wanted my day too. For the first time, I really looked at her, not as the golden child, but as a woman clinging desperately to the only identity she'd ever known. She wasn't glowing with maternal joy. She was shrinking under guilt and insecurity. You've always had your day, I said quietly. Every day of my life, it's been your day. Silence thickened the room. My father shifted uncomfortably. We didn't come here to be attacked. We came to fix this. So tell us, what do you want from us, Chandra? I almost laughed again. What did I want? A time machine. A redo of every birthday, every graduation, every milestone they skipped. I want the truth, I said finally. Stop pretending you treat us equally. Stop pretending your choices don't hurt me. Stop pretending this is the first time you've chosen Natalie over me. My mother's lip trembled. We love both of you. No, I said firmly. You don't, not equally, you never have. Natalie's voice broke suddenly, raw and small. I scheduled the shower on your wedding day on purpose. The words sliced through me like a blade. What? My voice cracked. She looked down at her lap, shame flooding her face. I knew they'd choose me, they always do, and I needed that win just once. I felt the air leave my lungs. My parents stared at her in horror, but neither of them spoke. You deliberately sabotaged me, I whispered. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I was jealous. I thought you had the career, the apartment, the fiancé who loved you. All I had was this baby. And suddenly, with your wedding, I felt invisible. I just wanted to be the center of attention. The room spun around me. For years, I'd thought my parents' favoritism was unconscious, a blind spot. But hearing Natalie admit she weaponized it, that she used their bias to crush me on purpose, felt like my chest was caving in. That's cruel, I managed, my voice shaking. I know, she sobbed. I didn't realize how much it would hurt until I saw that photo. I'm sorry. My father cleared his throat, his voice gruff. This isn't helping. Chandra, tell us how to make this right. I looked at him, at all of them. You want to make it right, admit it publicly, the same way I had to, no more pretending we're some perfect family. My father scoffed. You expect us to post some kind of apology on Facebook, humiliate ourselves. You already humiliated me, I shot back. On the most important day of my life. This isn't about humiliation, it's about honesty. My mother's hands twisted in her lap. And if we do, she asked softly, what then? Then maybe we start over. With honesty, with boundaries, with respect. But I'm not going back to the way things were. The silence stretched. My parents exchanged glances, an unspoken conversation flickering between them. My father looked like he wanted to argue more, but something in my expression must have warned him. He exhaled sharply, muttering, "We'll think about it." As they stood to leave, Natalie lingered by the door. Her eyes were swollen, her voice quiet. "For what it's worth, your wedding dress was beautiful. I saw the photos. You looked happy, really happy." It wasn't enough, not even close, but it was something. When the door clicked shut, I collapsed into Jackson's arms. "You were amazing," he whispered into my hair. "You spoke your truth. For once, they had to listen." I wanted to believe him, but all I felt was exhaustion. The next morning, I woke to a splitting headache and a sense of dread. Therapy was already on my calendar. Dr. Karen, the therapist Taylor, had begged me to see after the wedding. I dragged myself there, every muscle heavy. Dr. Karen's office smelled faintly of vanilla candles, the walls lined with soft bookshelves. I sat on the couch, staring at the patterned rug. "How did it go?" she asked gently. "They admitted some things," I said, "but it doesn't feel like enough. Natalie told me she scheduled her shower to hurt me, on purpose." Dr. Karen's brows furrowed. "How did that make you feel?" "Like I've been bleeding my whole life, and she just twisted the knife." "And your parents?" "They want me to take the post down. They're more worried about appearances than about what they actually did." She leaned forward. "So here's the question. Are you willing to sacrifice your truth to keep the peace?" Her words hung in the air like a challenge, and I knew the answer. 2 days later, I got the proof. I was in the kitchen pouring coffee when Jackson called out, "Chan, you need to see this." He was holding his phone, his face a mix of shock and relief. My father had posted on his rarely used Facebook account. "Many have asked about our absence from Chandra's wedding. The truth is, we made a terrible choice to attend another event instead. There is no excuse for missing our daughter's wedding day. We are working to earn her forgiveness and be better parents going forward." I read it 3 times, my hands shaking. It wasn't everything I wanted. It didn't erase the empty chairs. But it was the first time in my life my father had publicly acknowledged hurting me. Jackson wrapped his arms around me from behind. "It's a start," he whispered. And for the first time in weeks, I let myself cry. The phone rang at 2:17 a.m., ripping me out of sleep. Jackson stirred beside me groggy, but something in the way the phone buzzed relentlessly made my stomach knot. I answered, my voice thick. "Hello." It was my mother. Her tone was sharp and panicked, the opposite of the cool dismissal she usually reserved for me. "Chandra, it's Natalie. She's in the hospital. You need to come." For a second, I thought I was dreaming. What happened? "She collapsed," my mom whispered, her voice cracking. "The baby, they're running tests. Please come." I sat frozen, heart racing. My sister, the one who had deliberately sabotaged my wedding, the one who had just confessed to hurting me on purpose, was suddenly fragile, human, mortal. Jackson sat up, rubbing my back. "We'll go," he said gently, answering for me when I couldn't. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee. Harsh fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, making the hallways feel endless. When we reached the maternity ward, I spotted my parents slumped in vinyl chairs, faces pale under the cold glow. My mother shot up when she saw me. "Thank God you came," she whispered, gripping my arms. Her nails dug into my skin like she was anchoring herself. I looked past her toward the closed door where Natalie lay. "How is she?" "They don't know yet," my father muttered, his voice rough. For once, he looked older than I'd ever seen him, deflated, his shoulders bowed. I wanted to feel compassion. I wanted to be the dutiful daughter who rushed in without hesitation, but part of me burned with anger. They hadn't been there for me, and now they were demanding I show up for them. An hour later, a doctor emerged, clipboard in hand. He had the kind of tired face that belonged to someone who had seen too many families fall apart at 3 a.m. "She's stable," he said, "but she fainted from severe anemia and dehydration. We'll need to run x-rays and additional tests to rule out complications. The baby's heart rate is strong, but stress could pose risks." My mother clasped her chest, tears of relief spilling. "Can we see her?" "One at a time," the doctor said. His gaze landed on me. "You're the sister." I hesitated, the word felt foreign on my tongue. "Yes. She's asking for you." Inside the room, the steady beep of the heart monitor filled the silence. Natalie lay pale against the sheets, IV lines snaking into her arms. Her eyes fluttered open when I entered, glassy with tears. "Chan," her voice cracked. "I thought I was going to lose the baby." Something inside me softened against my will. For all her cruelty, for all the ways she'd weaponized our parents' favoritism, she was still my sister. And lying there, fragile and terrified, she wasn't the golden child. She was just Natalie. "You're okay," I whispered, pulling a chair close. "The baby's okay." Tears slid down her cheeks. "I'm sorry, for everything. For the shower, for stealing your night, for all of it. I was so jealous, I couldn't think straight. But when I collapsed, all I could think about was how I might never get the chance to make it right with you." I swallowed hard, emotions warring inside me. Anger, compassion, grief. Words are easy, Natalie. Actions are harder. "I know," she whispered, "but I want to try." Over the next few hours, doctors came and went. They wheeled in an ultrasound machine, rubbing cold gel over her belly as the screen flickered with grainy images of the baby. A rhythmic thump-thump filled the room, the heartbeat steady, insistent. "Strong and healthy," the technician said with a small smile. Relief washed over everyone, even me. But beneath it was a deeper ache. Because while Natalie's baby had a strong heartbeat, mine, the metaphorical one I'd been begging my parents to hear for years, had been ignored until it nearly flatlined. At dawn, I stepped into the hallway to clear my head. Jackson was waiting with 2 cups of bitter vending machine coffee. He handed me one, his eyes full of quiet understanding. "How is she?" he asked. "Stable," I said, sipping the too hot liquid. "The baby's fine." "That's good," he said gently, then after a pause, "And you?" I stared at the peeling linoleum floor. I don't know. Sitting in there, I kept thinking, why is it always me showing up for them? Why is it always me swallowing my pain? Jackson squeezed my hand. "Because you're the one with courage. But courage doesn't mean letting them walk all over you. It means knowing where your limits are." Later that morning, the doctor called us into a small consultation room. The sterile smell of bleach stung my nose as I sat at the round table across from my parents. The doctor spread x-rays across the surface, pointing with a pen. "Her fainting was triggered by anemia, but there's another concern," he said, tapping the film. "We found signs of elevated stress levels affecting her blood pressure and iron absorption. If this continues, both she and the baby could face complications." He looked up at us pointedly. "Stress management is crucial here. She needs a calm, supportive environment." My mother nodded furiously. "Of course, we'll do everything to keep her calm." The doctor's gaze lingered on me. She mentioned feeling a lot of family conflict. That tension isn't helping. My chest tightened. Even here, in a hospital, I was being painted as part of the problem. In the hallway afterward, my father turned on me. His voice was low but sharp. "Do you hear that? This drama, this post you made, it's affecting her health. You need to fix this." Rage flared. "Me, I'm not the one who abandoned my sister on her wedding day. I'm not the one who pitted us against each other for years. Don't you dare put this on me." He glared, but before he could reply, Jackson stepped in, his voice calm but firm. "She's not the cause. She's been the scapegoat for years. If Natalie's stress is hurting her, maybe you should look at how you've treated both your daughters." The words hung in the air like a bomb. My father's face flushed, his fists clenching, but he said nothing. That night, I sat at Natalie's bedside again. She was dozing, her hand resting on her belly. In the quiet, I whispered, "You almost lost everything tonight, and I almost lost the chance to ever forgive you." Her eyes opened slowly. "Will you?" I swallowed hard. I don't know, but I'm willing to try if you are. Tears welled in her eyes. I am more than you know. When we finally left the hospital, the morning sun was rising, painting the sky in streaks of pink and gold. Jackson laced his fingers through mine as we walked to the car. Do you regret going? He asked softly. I shook my head. No, but I regret how much it still hurts. He kissed my temple. Healing hurts before it heals. You're stronger than you think. I looked back at the hospital, at the room where my sister and her unborn child lay, and felt the weight of the night settle deep in my bones. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just about me versus them. This was about cycles, about patterns that had nearly cost us more than we could bear. And I wasn't sure if we could ever break them. When Natalie was discharged from the hospital 3 days later, the entire family seemed to shift into damage control mode. My parents whispered about protecting her from stress, but what they really meant was protecting ourselves from embarrassment. They invited me over for dinner, insisting it would be a chance to reset. Against my better judgment, I went, partly for Natalie, partly because some small part of me still craved proof that they could change. But the moment I stepped into their dining room, I knew it wasn't about healing. It was about control. The smell of roasted chicken and garlic bread hung in the air, but instead of comfort, it made my stomach churn. The table was set too neatly, the air too thick. Natalie sat at one end, pale but smiling weakly. My parents sat across from each other, their faces a mix of forced warmth and tension. My mother started with a sigh. Chandra, we've all been under so much strain, we just want to move forward. Moving forward doesn't mean pretending nothing happened, I said quietly, sliding into a chair. My father's jaw tightened. It also doesn't mean airing family business to the world. Do you know how many phone calls we've had to field? Do you realize what you've put us through? I stared at him, incredulous. What I put you through, you left me to walk alone on my wedding day, and you're worried about gossip. Natalie's eyes flicked between us, her lips trembling. For once, she didn't jump in. Jackson cleared his throat beside me, his calm presence grounding me. With respect, he said, Chandra didn't create this problem. She revealed it. If people are upset, maybe it's because they see the truth now. My father bristled, but before he could fire back, the front door opened. Aunt Julia walked in carrying a casserole dish, her voice sharp. I heard we were having a family meeting. I thought I'd join. Everyone froze, my mother's face drained of color. Julia, this isn't. Oh, it is, Aunt Julia cut her off, setting the dish down with a thud. I'm tired of watching this play out in silence. The room tensed like a stretched wire. Julia turned to me, her eyes soft. Chandra, I read your post, and I need you to know you weren't crazy. You weren't imagining it. I've watched them favor Natalie your whole life. I stayed quiet to keep the peace, and I was wrong. Tears pricked my eyes. Her words cracked something open in me, validation I'd craved for decades. My mother's voice trembled. Julia, don't. But Julia was relentless. She turned on my parents. Do you remember Chandra's debate championship? You promised you'd go, and instead you took Natalie to a movie. Or when she graduated college and you nearly missed it because of Natalie's prom, or the engagement dinner you let Natalie hijack. My father's face darkened. That's enough. No, Alan, Julia said firmly. It's not enough, because I enabled it too. I stood by while you erased one daughter to glorify the other. And now it's come to this, a wedding with empty chairs. The words landed like gunfire. Natalie's voice broke the silence. She's right. All eyes turned to her. She looked fragile, her hands clasped over her stomach, but her voice held a tremor of truth. I did it on purpose. I scheduled the shower on her wedding day because I wanted to win for once. I thought if everyone came to my event, it would mean I mattered more. But lying in that hospital bed, all I could think about was how selfish that was. How cruel. My mother gasped. Natalie, don't say that. You were stressed. You didn't mean it. Yes, I did, Natalie said, her voice firming. And I need to own it. Chandra deserved better. She always has. The room fell silent. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. My father rubbed his temples, his voice rough. You don't understand the pressure parents face. We did our best. No, I said quietly, steadying my voice. You did what was easiest. You catered to Natalie's every need and called it love. You told me to be strong, to be independent, so you didn't have to show up for me. That's not parenting. That's neglect dressed up as responsibility. My father's head snapped up, eyes blazing. Don't you dare accuse us. I'm not accusing, I cut him off. I'm telling you, and the fact that you're angrier about my post than about missing my wedding says everything. My mother burst into tears. We made a mistake. No, Aunt Julia said firmly. You made a pattern, and it nearly broke your daughter. The tension shattered when Jackson reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Chandra wasn't going to show you this yet, but maybe it's time. He slid it across the table. My father picked it up, frowning as he unfolded it. It was the wedding photo, the one of me walking alone down the aisle, empty chairs glaring. This is the reality, Jackson said. This is what everyone saw, not gossip, not exaggeration, just the truth you don't want to face. My mother sobbed harder, my father's face hardened. You're tearing this family apart. No, I said, my voice rising. You did that when you chose not to show up. I'm just refusing to hide it anymore. Natalie reached across the table, her hand trembling as it touched mine. I'm sorry, she whispered again. I can't undo it, but I don't want to be the reason you feel unloved anymore. Her sincerity caught me off guard. For the first time, I believed she meant it. But believing her didn't erase the years of damage. I need boundaries, I said firmly, pulling my hand back. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be on different terms. No more lies, no more pretending. My father looked like he might argue, but Aunt Julia's glare silenced him. That night, Jackson and I drove home in silence. The city lights blurred through the windshield as I replayed every word, every tear, every confession. Finally, Jackson spoke. You were incredible. I don't feel incredible, I whispered. I feel like I'm bleeding out. Sometimes the truth feels like bleeding, he said softly, but it's also the only way to heal. I leaned against the window, tears slipping silently down my face. For the first time, the cracks in my family weren't hidden anymore. They were wide open for everyone to see, and part of me wondered if exposing them would destroy us completely or finally set me free. The fallout from that dinner came faster and harder than I could have imagined. By the next morning, my phone was buzzing nonstop again. Only this time, it wasn't strangers, it was family. Cousins who had always stayed quiet were suddenly texting me. I saw Julia's post. I'm so sorry, Chandra, we should have spoken up sooner. Uncles I hadn't heard from in years called to say, your dad's furious, but he needed to hear it. It was like the truth had ripped open a dam. Everything we'd buried for decades came flooding out. And my parents, they retreated into silence. My father didn't call. My mother sent one text, just 3 words, you've hurt us. Hurt them? Not by walking down the aisle alone, not by years of neglect, but by refusing to pretend anymore. 3 weeks later, Natalie went back to the hospital for follow-up tests. I went with her, not because my parents asked, but because part of me still believed in second chances. The waiting room smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee. Natalie fidgeted beside me, her nails tapping nervously against her phone. Finally, the doctor called us in. He pointed at the X-rays, his tone clinical. Your iron levels are improving, but the stress markers are still concerning. If your environment doesn't change, this pregnancy will remain high risk. Natalie's eyes filled with tears. She looked at me, then whispered, I can't keep living like this. I don't want my baby to grow up in the same kind of favoritism and competition we did. The words hit me harder than I expected. For the first time, she wasn't minimizing what had happened. She was admitting it, numbing it. And that was the beginning of something fragile but real. Accountability. Therapy became my lifeline. Every Wednesday afternoon, I sat in Dr. Karen's office, the vanilla candles flickering, the clock ticking softly behind me. Where are you today? She asked, and I'd pour it all out. The anger, the grief, the tiny glimmers of hope. 6 months after the wedding, I told her, my father asked me about my work project last week. He actually listened. It was the first time in my life I felt like he cared. She smiled. How did that feel? Strange, like trying on a pair of shoes I never thought would fit. And when my mother finally admitted during a session, I thought protecting Natalie meant loving her more. I didn't realize I was starving you, I broke down sobbing. Because for the first time, she wasn't deflecting. She was owning it. But healing wasn't linear. There were setbacks, like the night my father called and said, "People still bring up that post. Can't you just delete it?" I told him no, calmly, firmly, and for once I didn't feel guilty. There were small victories, too. Like when Aunt Julia invited me to her house for dinner with cousins, and for the first time, I felt like part of a family gathering instead of an outsider. And then there were scars. Invisible ones, yes, but also physical. 2 months after Natalie's scare, she gave birth prematurely after another fainting episode. I'll never forget the night my phone rang. This time, Jackson and I rushed to the hospital again. The waiting room smelled of antiseptic and fear, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Hours later, Natalie was wheeled out, exhausted but smiling weakly. "It's a girl," she whispered. "Her name is Lily." When I held that tiny baby in my arms, swaddled and fragile, something shifted in me. Lily wasn't responsible for the chaos that came before her. She was innocent, a blank slate. I promised myself in that moment that I would be the kind of aunt who showed up always. But Lily's early birth left Natalie with lasting health complications. She bore the physical scars, I bore the emotional ones. In a way, we were both marked forever by the choices our family had made. Slowly, painfully, accountability began to take root. My father posted again on Facebook, not prompted by me this time, but by his own guilt. "I failed my daughter when she needed me most. I let my priorities get twisted. I won't pretend we're a perfect family anymore. But I'm committed to being a better father and grandfather from this day forward." It wasn't eloquent, it wasn't grand, but it was honest, and honesty was a language we'd never spoken before. My mother started therapy on her own, something I never thought I'd see. She told me one afternoon over coffee, her hands trembling around the mug, "I don't want Lily to grow up thinking love is conditional. I don't want to make the same mistakes twice." And Natalie, well, Natalie was different too. Motherhood softened her edges, gave her perspective. She apologized often, not with dramatic words but with actions. She showed up for me. For once, she showed up. Jackson and I built new traditions in the meantime. Sunday brunches with friends who celebrated us without conditions. Monthly dinners with his parents, Thomas and Martha, who had become my real family in every sense. One evening, Martha hugged me after dessert and whispered, "Every bride deserves parents who dance with her at her wedding. I'm sorry you didn't have that, but you'll always have us." Her words were a balm on wounds that still stung. Now, a year after the wedding, I look at that infamous photo often, the one of me walking alone down the aisle, empty chairs glaring. At first, it was pure pain, proof of abandonment, but now I see something else too: strength, resilience. The woman in that photo wasn't broken, she was stepping into a new life, even if she didn't know it yet. I've learned that family isn't always the people who share your blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up, who hold you when you fall apart, who dance with you when no one else will. I've learned that telling the truth is terrifying, but silence is worse. Silence is a slow death. And I've learned that scars, whether they're physical like Natalie's or emotional like mine, don't mean you're broken. They mean you survived. When I look at Lily now, gurgling in her crib with Natalie dozing beside her, I feel a strange mix of grief and hope. Grief for the years I lost, the childhood I can't get back. Hope that maybe, just maybe, we can break the cycle for her. Will my parents ever fully change? I don't know. But I do know this: I will never again accept scraps of affection when I deserve a feast. I will never again walk down an aisle, literal or metaphorical, hoping someone will show up for me. Because I can walk alone if I have to, but I'll never walk in silence again. Have you ever had to stand up to family, even when it tore you apart? Have you ever realized that sometimes the people you expect to love you most are the ones who let you down the hardest? If my story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments. Remember, your feelings are valid and you deserve to be celebrated. And if you've ever had to walk alone, know this: you're stronger than you think. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story. You never know who might need to hear that they're not alone.